they dropped the episode early on us. First of all, for me, it was crazy because they dropped it on a Friday night when the Lakers were on. Like, I'm like, don't make me choose. Don't make me choose. Like, I'm choosing the Lakers every time, even though my Lakers got murdered. But we ain't gonna talk about that. So, episode 4, A History of Violence. Once again, super fast moving, just kind of episode. At the end, I'm just like, okay, we went from trying to figure stuff out to finding a vault in Boston that led to a water and a ship. And then I still don't understand how they got back to Chicago. Like, I don't understand how they went from Boston to Chicago, because when they was in the vault, they was like, how long, Letty asked how long we've been walking. It takes 20 minutes. The last time I checked, it wasn't no 20-minute walk from Boston to Chicago.
Magic.
So this is something that if we had the regular release day and you and I had done the second recap show for last week, it hit me on the rewatch of episode 3. The first time through, I thought when the reporter at the end asked Letty if she knew anything about her missing white neighbors, and she said, no, I hadn't heard anything about it. Erica is thinking I'm not going anywhere with this. Or, like, when I thought at first she was just saying something, I thought she was joking or like whatever, and then it pans down and it shows them dead in this corridor in the basement.
Right.
It wasn't until I watched it the second time that I realized there's a ghost in the house controlling the elevator that had nothing to do with Hiram or with the spirits that helped her defeat Hiram. And it tried to take her out the very first time she walked in the house. It did take out a boy that lost his head. And then as soon as her and the reporter stepped out, the door shut and you see the lever move by itself, and it goes down past the basement and keeps going.
Right.
So I think what he's trying to say is that's the time, because the elevator, they go back up in.
Because at the end of the episode, it's the 3 dead white dudes that broke out and a whole bunch of other bodies in this cavern that looked very much like the one that they were traveling through tonight. So there's still a spirit in Letty's house.
Okay.
Or a spell or something. But so it ties together because there's some kind of link in those catacombs between Boston and Chicago.
Right. That part, yeah. And so look, I chalked it up to one of those kind of like Game of Thrones, ravens fly super freaking fast things, right? Like, where it's just, they're in this whole catacomb vault thing or whatever. Like, at the end of it, I kind of was like, okay, I don't understand. Because it kind of really threw me off when Hippolyta and Dee were driving back, and Dee was like, well, how did they get back to Chicago? And I'm like, Hippolyta, how did they get back to Chicago? Like, wait a minute, what's going on? And so, but then like I love the way they end all of these shows. Like, they do not mess around with the ending. Like, they end every single show like it's a freaking series finale. I was just like, okay, so crazy man, woman, chick, spirit.
Like, can we talk about how this was like Black Indiana Jones for a minute?
That was the quote of the night. I wrote it down in my notebook halfway through it. It's like, this is just like Black Indiana. I'm like, that's going in the show tonight.
But there's part of me that thinks about this show for what it's doing for the culture. And sometimes when it's just regular, I'm like, man, this is really regular. But then when I think about our kids, and I thought about teaching them history, and I thought, you know what? We can just be regular. We can run around and do regular things and be scared of stuff or be, do normal things. And so actually, when I said that, I thought, this is cool. We're seeing Black folks run around dealing with like just regular fiction, right?
Right.
That was kind of cool.
So it's okay. So it is very telling that you say that, because I think when Tick went down, into the vault, and I guess the rest of them came down there looking at the three doors or the three pathways. I did get a very Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Like it just, I was like, wow, like this seems familiar, and like it was him and his dad, and it was. I was just like, okay, all right, like they doing this whole thing or whatever. So I thought that whole section was. I loved that part of it. I will say with this episode more so than any other ones, I felt the fast paced nature of it, like how quickly they developed this story. It actually did feel rushed to me in this one. I felt like it was a whole lot kind of going on because it was like, all right, they went in the beginning from, Montrose kind of dealing with his demons or whatever, which I want to stick a pin in and come back to. But it just, like, again, it quickly escalated from that to let's go to this trip, let's go figure this out. And then now we're doing the whole Indiana Jones thing. And I was just kind of like, man, this all seemed kind of rushed. But I do this one more so than any other ones. But I like the way it kind of came out. Like we got a lot of more information as they kind of went down to the vault and they find out this stuff or whatever. But I want to go back to Montrose for a minute because I watched it with the subtitles on. And I think that beginning scene with Montrose where he's, drinking, kind of, basically dealing with his demons, dealing with the fact of George's death, but also kind of going through and reading this book. One of the things I thought was interesting that I wouldn't have caught unless I had the subtitles on was that he was flashing back between like memories of when he had a childhood and then some of the last words that George had told him and was telling him about the book. I don't know if you guys caught that, where he was like, give this to Tick, like it's like something like give this to Tick to protect us or to protect you guys or something like that. He's going to need this.
You might be the only thing he has left. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was just very interesting. And I knew in the beginning, like when he decided to burn the book, like instant foreshadowing. I was like, oh, great. They going to need that. Like,
that's going to be problematic.
Yeah. Right. And so what do you got? So I'm starting to, and obviously they end with this, right? With him killing this spirit. But even in the beginning, I felt like they were building this case of distrust with Montrose. Like we already kind of don't like him because of how he treats Tick. But like I felt like they hinted a lot more at like he knows a lot more about this than he's letting on.
Yeah.
And the ending kind of leads me to believe like he's kind of in on this somehow. Like he knows something, like he knows enough about it, and now he doesn't want to get Tick involved or something like that or whatever. So I don't know. So what did you guys think about just Montrose's character in this episode?
Yeah, I feel that too. I feel like up until this episode, I thought that he was just the drunk father that may not be the father that is just trying to get in the way to be spiteful.
Right.
But this episode really made me feel like he actually knows what's going on and he's playing dumb. And then when he gets the moment, he's cutting everything they do off at the knees.
Right.
It's deeper too, because it's not him that Tick has the connection to the Braithwaites through. It's Tick's mom.
Right.
So if Montrose is not truly Tick's dad, if that was George, that means that, what is really his connection? Because
I don't know. Could be jealousy.
Yeah, and that's what, is he trying to sabotage because of jealousy, or is he in some competing faction that is trying to stop?
True.
Whatever.
So
accomplish.
So I'm gonna throw out my theory real quick, right? And this is like maybe it's about a 3 or 4 minute scene little nugget that they dropped in there. So here's what I think I do think George is Tick's father because I think Montrose is gay.
Yeah, we did catch that.
And he doesn't want, and so I think what he's trying to hide Tick from finding out more about his past because it reveals Montrose's past as well. So I think that's what, because I started thinking like, why? So remember the times we're in the 1950s, right? So it is bad times to be black, a woman, and gay, right? Like, and so
changed.
Right? Not much changed. So I'm thinking about it as like, why was he always so like just vehemently upset at George when he was like, we said we weren't going to speak of this, we're not going to bring it up or whatever. And I'm just kind of like, all right. So clearly there was something going. So I just kind of started playing this out. I was like, okay, let's say that he was gay. George used to always say that Montrose used to get the worst of it from his father, right? Mm-hmm. So now you start to deal with, right, it's historically bad, and especially in the African-American community, of homophobia, right? So I could see that Montrose being the one that always got the brunt of it because his father, or maybe they knew at early age that he was gay. So then they go through this thing to try and hide it, and they do the whole thing where it's like, okay, we're going to set you up with Tick's mom so we can put on the cover, right? But in reality, that wasn't the thing. So I just, I kind of we're taking a little far, but I'm like, okay, well, that would explain then why they would say, look, we're going to bury this. We're never going to talk about it. And we're just going to continue going forward. That would be why I feel like Montrose resents Tick, because it's this thing that he has to hide, this to deal with, why he drinks so much, all this stuff or whatever, and why he so vehemently wants to protect it. So, and then it kind of led me there because he kept, and I know they played it out that way, right? So then once Tree, which we'll get to this dude in a minute, once Tree said something to Tick, right? Tick starts looking at things differently. He looks at the conversation with the security guard and his dad or whatever. So, or Montrose. So anyway, that's my theory on that. I think that there is something there, and that's part of the reason why he's so vehemently doesn't want to talk about anything and is trying to cover it up. But it doesn't really explain why he's trying to prevent Tick from finding out of this stuff. I feel like there's something there. Either
I think it's both. I think it's your theory. I think it's a little bit of I think he knows more about the actual. Yeah. Because think about it in the library when Letty says, Montrose knows more than you think, and then he looks at all of the checkout names, and Montrose's name is already there. So
yeah.
So here's my thing. That conversation was definitely not a throwaway conversation. Just like the little boy in the library reading Journey to the Center of the Earth was not just, that.
Yeah, by the third time they showed that little boy getting mad, I said, Paul.
and so that connection was made really quickly. The only seemingly random piece of the show so far is freaking Tree. What is his purpose? Why does he show up out of nowhere to jump in the car? And was his entire purpose in the episode really just to have that conversation with Tick? Was his purpose in last episode just to make Tick jealous when he said that he and Letty used to tussle back in high school? It turns out that was a big fat lie. It just...
That could be that could be like a writer's room thing. Let's create this character that has
just completely useless, but pops up with a reveal of information here and there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he has a deeper purpose somewhere down the road, because right now it's random as hell.
It doesn't seem like it. I think he was there. I like Erica's comment of the writer's room thing. I literally think he was there. So if the theory pans out that Montrose is gay, right? So and I can see them in the writer's room going, okay, so somehow we got to introduce this to everybody. What do we do? Because it just, to your point, he serves no other purpose, right? Because when they were pulling out, I thought it was so random. It was like, hey, I got a Philly up in Philly. Who are you and what? Why are you? Yeah. Why are you getting in the car? Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was very interesting, which was, it was this whole tension between Tick and Letty, throughout the entire episode. It was a very clear, it's funny as you get older, right? You start to see all the things and look back on life. And maybe I'm just a little more about myself, but I mean, it is what it is. As soon as the first scene between them two, I was like, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's that whole look, we done slept together. We ain't really talked about it since. Kind of like you, but I don't know. And so is this. They literally in the beginning went back to the whole schoolyard. I like you, so I'm gonna be mean to you. I'm just I was like, this is so Letty just being on this little attitude and rampage or whatever. Then Tick acting like he don't care, but he does care. And I'm just like, y'all really gonna play this little 8-9-year-old game? That's what y'all gonna do? This entire episode? That's what y'all gonna do? I was like, okay, all right.
And the fact that she's been the biggest badass in the show so far,
and he acted like he protected her.
That she's done everything.
Yeah, it's quite hilarious. But she does get him told finally down in the water, like, "Yeah, you quit acting like this is the only time."
Yeah,
Right.
That was a good line.
But they gave Montrose that little moment with Tick to get him straight on this woman, though. That was sweet.
I thought that was interesting.
I think he was playing.
I think
it was still a good little nugget.
You know, I don't. Number one, Dave, like you said, it from the little hints that they're dropping, it doesn't feel like he was probably talking about. He was talking about the love of his life, right? Probably was not a woman, but he tried to go real hard out of his way to make it sound like he was talking about a woman. And then the moment at the end when he and Tick have that moment where he tells him how proud of him he was for being so brave, and then pulls the move that he pulls, it's like, is anything that you say genuine? Are you playing some kind of long con? Is there a purpose behind these moments that you're trying to build, where you're trying to build trust with Tick? What's really going on with Montrose?
Yeah. So, what did you guys? And I need to. So I've watched it twice, but I want to go back and watch it one more time because I really want to study the ship scene, right? So when they find this spirit, and before I get into this, I want to love how they just completely washed over the fact that Tick was the only one that could understand her. Like, like they just I was expecting, like, okay, like in the moment, like they figured it out pretty quickly, like, okay, Tick understands us, so he gonna translate. I would expect that at some point they'd be like, okay, so Tick, we gonna talk about how did nobody else know what the hell she was saying but you? Like what like
Potter and Parcel Tongue.
But I just think it always. But anytime something like that happens to me, I just always trace it back to it's the blood. It's the you know, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense that if anybody's going to understand it, it's going to be him because of his blood connection.
Tick is both the Black Indiana Jones and Black Harry Potter. So Harry Potter speaks Parcel Tongue and didn't know it. Tick can speak Arawak and doesn't know it.
There we go. So I feel like there's a lot in that scene. First glance, what I got, or first watch through, what I got out of it was, right, so Titus goes to the Caribbean and finds out that these people can speak or know the language of Adam, can somehow decipher it. And so, basically wants to, use them to help him get what he wants, right? So they figure, she explains most of it, or the spirit explains most of it, right? Once they figure it out, they don't want to help him. And then apparently he, genocide, right? Like that's the answer to everything. Apparently it's like, oh, you don't want to help me, I'll just kill everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was a lot of like, when they were walking in this ship, right? Because when they first walked in and they looked around at the table, I immediately went to the Last Supper. Like that's the first thing that I saw, the way it was set up. And I was like, okay, well, what is this? But then they're walking around, and then when they get back to the spirit and the scroll, which also, how does that scroll of paper survive underwater? But anyway, we'll get to that. Magic, I guess. But then that's when I noticed that they were back in like the captain's section of the ship. Like wherever that spirit was, like they were in the big captain section. You saw the big kind of windows in the back. So I was like, okay, well, that then kind of changed some things, because as you come out of the captain's quarters, you have this table, you have all these people sitting. So there was a lot of stuff set up that I was just like, first time I'm going through, I'm just like, whatever, I'm just into it. So I was like, I'm not really paying attention. And then the second time, by the time I got to that part, I was doing some other things. But I really want to go back because I feel like there was a lot of symbolism there. There was a lot of things that were in this ship that were important. And I just want to go back and listen to her story again. So like, with that, like, what did you guys, with this kind of, well, was New Spirit, and then, well, we think that, or it seems like Montrose killed her, or killed it. Like, what was your take on this whole scene and this kind of like revelation of this side of Titus?
I think I might be with you on the fact that I think it might take a second watch, because I feel like the first time it was just, whoa, it is doing its thing. It's coming alive. They. Yeah, pronouns.
They. There you go. They.
And so yeah, I don't know, but it will be interesting to go back and because you say Last Supper, but I was getting a lot of feel about like ships and slavery and like just another people that you're, using to, that I was getting that feeling. Not that that's what it was, but
right.
That's what it was bringing up.
Okay.
Because there's always a connection, right? In every episode, there always seems to be that modern day connection to black and white, like the racism thing.
Right.
So that's, I think, maybe why I was thinking that.
Okay.
There's that one moment where they focus in on the woman nursing the child, and it's like,
yeah,
wow, what
Yeah.
The part of me wants to say, well, maybe that's a symbol for, he took out everybody, right? The most
just showing how
and helpless of anybody. But is there something else? Is that deeper than that? I don't know. Deeper than just a show of cruelty.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There was definitely a whole lot there. I thought we would see or get a little bit more of Hippolyta this episode. So I'm a little disappointed. But I mean, we did get, the tidbit about, what is it? Orrery? I'm going to pronounce that right.
Yeah.
That she took it. We got that nice scene between her and her dad talking about, astrology and the different things and trying to figure that out. So I felt like that was again, kind of, as we were saying, last week, like we know there's a connection there with her, right? She's definitely in tune with more than she's letting, or that it seems to be. And I think this kind of delved a little bit more into that. And I was hoping
next episode.
Yeah.
Like pulling the car over, like we about to get some answers.
Right. I feel like there's a whole like 20 to 30 minutes of Hippolyta that we need right about now, that they've been building up to. And then especially to your point, when she flipped around the car, like we go get answers. I'm like, okay, great. Cause we want some answers to Hippolyta. Like what is going on?
The random scene with Letty's sister and old Ruby and
yo, yes.
Yeah. What's going on? Like, first of all, I guess surprised, but not surprised that he survived the collapsing of the manor house.
What is his name? I don't even know.
William.
James. William. Okay. Yeah. And so, like the moment where she cuts her hand and he licks the blood and then immediately kisses her, and just that whole thing, like what angle is he coming in at with trying to ingratiate himself to her? Why does she...
Oh, like I told you though, I don't know what it was I watched. I don't know what trailer I watched, but it showed every key character dressed up as something else, like in this story. Like, so, their time is coming.
It's definitely every character is going to be wrapped up in it by the time it's all.
I think Christina's trying to get to Letty. And you get to Letty through Ruby, right? And I think what was huge, to me, which kind of leads me to see, like, think what way Christina is going to go after her is that when Ruby said, well, she's my half sister.
Yeah.
Which then adds to everything else that we talked about before, this whole tension between Letty and Ruby. And so it's like, okay, that even adds more into it. And I think when Christina went to go to the house and found out that she couldn't get in, which I thought that was also very interesting because the seal was supposed to keep out, I can never say that word, malevolent, mean spirits.
Yeah.
Right? That was the whole part of the seal or whatever. So I was like, interesting that it won't let her in. So I immediately saw that when I saw him going toward, I was like, okay, so they're going to try and work the angle to get to Ruby to somehow kind of get to Letty or something like that or whatever. This is going to be interesting. So I'm definitely interested to see how that works into it. So the trailer, this time I actually stopped and watched the trailer because every time the episode goes off, I'm just like, oh my God, I got to start like writing stuff down and researching stuff, and I forget to watch the trailer. This time I actually watched the trailer So there is a little bit of, there was a scene with her and Oh Boy again, and I guess he was revealing to her that magic exists or something like that or whatever. And yeah, there's a plot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
a plot there.
And to kind of take it back to Hippolyta and Diana, we texted back and forth a little bit this week talking about some of the realizations that I've been having there, and just continuing on with the Greek mythology connections and with the astronomy connections, and the fact that all kinds of like astronomical things that she was connected to last episode, with the orrery, with the telescope in her room when she was tearing up Dracula's book, Dracula with the makeup dish with a star on it. The fact that Diana gave George the comic book that she had made, that she had drawn Hippolyta as the main hero of it, and her job was to drive the spaceship that she called Stony around the universe, studying planets and stuff.
Right.
The fact that Diana is the Roman goddess of the moon.
It's a lot of Easter eggs.
Lots, and the fact that Hippolyta discovered a comet and named it Hera's chariot. Hera is the queen of the gods in Greek mythology, but then got the recognition taken from her because nobody would want the little colored girl to credit and be the face of the contest.
So that was another interesting scene that I felt like it felt a little out of place. When I thought about it later, I was like, okay, well, I definitely get it was the bonding moment with, mother and daughter, telling her a little bit about her past. I thought it was very interesting. I don't know, does anybody know how old Dee is supposed to be?
She's 13.
That's what I feel.
Because I felt it was very much, this is the first time we really saw like an interaction between those two, like for any kind of length of time. So as Hippolyta tells her the story, I thought it was interesting that, she responded like, hey, Mom, you should have fought for that, right? Like there was this very real kind of like older kind of moment. Like to this point, I thought I pictured in my head Dee was younger, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't put an age to her, but when they were having this conversation, I was like, wow, that's pretty for a child to like, okay, take this in about your mom did something that was taken away from her, and then to me, she does two things I think are incredible. Number one, said comfortable to tell her mom, like, hey, you should have fought for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's, and this is just more to me, like growing up, right? It took me a while to see my mom as anything other than my mom. Right. So to be confident enough to tell her, to tell her mom, like, hey, you should have fought for that. I was like, that was pretty cool. Like just kind of showing some of the maturity that she has. But then like the end, which I love, like, hey, everybody, my mama named this comic. Right? She was like, well, now they know too. Right. So two very, like, I thought that was a very big, like kind of Dee moment to show that, like, that's when I was like, well, how old is she? Because I'm thinking like 9-ish, 10-ish, but I'm like, that's pretty bold for, you know what I mean? Like a 9-year-old.
Well, see, what made me think she was a young teenager was like even from the first episode when George and Hippolyta are back in the bedroom and she's out drawn and she hears their intimate moment and she's just like, gross.
Oh, because she
gets up to leave, and it's like
that's true.
She's old enough to know what that is and to think that it's young enough to think that it's gross. So
that's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, I just I don't know. All in all, another, like I said, fast-paced episode.
It's interesting you thought it was fast. I felt it was slow.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I see it from both points of view. Like they covered Game of Thrones is a good example, particularly season 7 and 8, right? Like they covered so much ground in so short a time that it felt a little jarring, but then it didn't feel like
I guess
the action.
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of things. Like, I didn't write down nearly as many things in my notebook this week while I was watching as I did last week. Last week there was just constantly things that were mentioned, and I'm like, ooh, check that out. Ooh, look this up real quick. And this one, it feels like it was really straightforward. On first watch, it's the one that it didn't grab me, and like I didn't have any of those like, oh, I need to remember to breathe moments.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not to say that like when the pages magically start to float away and Letty's got to do her best Indiana Jones,
it was just
going after his hat.
Compact this time.
Yeah, like
the action was slower this time. When the action happened, it happened in one spot, and it was over. Everything else was just a bunch of like a lot of information. So I see how you feel like the information. Maybe we got a lot of information of other storylines and connecting points. But the action and not a whole lot of ghosts this time is to get us jumping out of our seats.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So so what I'm thinking in my mind about fast, and that's what I talk about, like the ground that they covered as far as the storytelling. Like I felt like they were like, okay, now there's this, and we're gonna go here, and I'm just like, okay, like I said, it just seemed like it went from here. Now we're in Boston. Now we're in the cave, and I'm just like, we just covered a whole ton of ground of the story. So, but as far as like the pace of the actual story, this one did feel, there wasn't this at the end of it, like, oh my God, like it was just kind of like, okay, all right, we saw some stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was so, I can get that part.
It was the first episode that it feels like they really focused on multiple storylines. You know, you've got Montrose by himself at the beginning. Then you've got Hippolyta talking to her dad. Then you've got, the road trip, and then they split up, and Hippolyta and Diana. And then you've got the three that go down into the crypt, and then you've got Hippolyta and Diana again. And so just they were almost, it felt like there were too many storylines for.
So, speaking of our favorite character here, where the hell is Tree? Because he wasn't in the car.
You have to call him Billy, right? Like, either that or they just left him there because it's a tool bag.
I was just like,
where does he ever go?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I found that they dropped this episode early, I kind of low-key got excited. I was like, well, maybe we'll get 2 episodes. We get this one and one on Sunday, but looks like they're still just going to do regular episode 4 on Sunday, which, again, I don't know why they dropped it early. I guess Labor Day. Who knows? I did see that, though, they're launching. I got to research a little bit more about it. I just read a quick blurb on it. But they're launching this whole, like, VR experience that goes with it. Like, and so that was part of the reason why they dropped this early. Yeah. Look, I'm going to be honest. The only reason I even thought about it was Oculus, which got bought by Facebook, has a partnership with the NBA, and they do this whole thing where they can do like courtside. And so if you have like league pass, like you can put on the Oculus VR and it's like you're courtside at the game. I was like, I might actually buy it just for that. But for the most part, yeah, I haven't been in VR. So anyway, they launched some kind of VR experience around it, and that was part of the promotion for dropping this early or something like that or whatever. So I don't know. But it's still us. So we're just gonna get episode 4 on the weekend. So I think with that, like we'll wrap it up. What's up?
One more thing. Erica found something that started to blow my mind earlier in the week. Meant to talk about. So somebody made a connection online. The kids doing the Ouija board, right? The kid.
Jeremy, just say it.
Okay. The kid who asked a question about his trip down south.
And it's
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I meant to talk about that. I meant to talk about that earlier. I saw that online. That one. That hurt. That made me look at that episode. I was like, oh.
You're gonna enjoy my trip, dang! Like, why do I have to do it like
right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that one hurt, and it was. it was subtle enough too. Like, I wanted to go back and research, like, how did somebody even figure that out? Like, I guess the picture of the shirt with the thing or whatever. But I mean, there wasn't, like, for me, there was not enough for me to make that connection 2 and 2. I feel like that was something somebody had to, like, leak out from the show or something like that. Because I just,
or it could be that just somebody that has either studied it recently,
that's true,
read into it a lot, just know that was familiar with that picture.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, but no, that was, I saw that call out. Yeah, that one, that was a good punch. Hopefully, Misha Green, please, no more of those. That one hurt. All right, folks. Well, we will wrap it up, and we will see you guys next week for episode 5. Hopefully, they don't drop it like on a Wednesday or something like that in the middle of the week. I will do a better job of trying to like monitor it and pay attention because I didn't know about it. My niece told me, and I was like, "It's Friday," and then I'm dropping it. She's like, "Yes, they are." All right, whatever. Right. The Lakers game. Watch the Lakers, even though we lost. So, all right. For everybody that's watching, appreciate you. Would love to hear your comments. It's kind of late as we're streaming this right now, but as you see this, leave your comments, let us know what you think, and we will see you all next week. Have a good night.